Well, it's finally over as the Toronto Blue Jays missed out on yet another free agent, this time in the form of Alex Bregman. We're going to break down the signing, but now that the signing has concluded and most of the Jays' targets have been signed elsewhere, it now shifts all their focus to the trade market. We're going to break down some new reports discussing that, as well as break down a new report that just dropped from Jon Heyman surrounding the Jays and Bregman that has fans intrigued. Stay tuned for all that in this episode, folks. Before we get to it, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Jays content. We're getting extremely close to 16,000 subscribers. You want to help us towards that goal, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys again for your continued support over here. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a ton of things to go over today. Now, obviously, we've been discussing on this channel a lot of the targets. We've been covering it all the way through, and now most of the targets have signed. Nick Pivetta signed tonight, which we'll break down a little bit, and Alex Bregman just signed with arguably the worst team for the Jays that he could have signed with in the Boston Red Sox. And man, oh man, did he get a hefty deal here. He got a 3-year, $120 million deal with opt-outs after each season. So talk about a player-friendly contract. And last season, it was kind of the polar opposite to this in the sense of there were a few players, Blake Snell, Mac Chapman, that, with Scott Boras clients as well, that pushed them into nearly spring training. Of course, players are starting to report today. And some teams, the Jays, are starting to see Bichette and some players file in as well. We'll see that tomorrow where the Jays players officially report to spring training. But man, oh man, he got a deal. 3 years, he's getting $40 million a year with opt-outs after each year. So if by some miracle he has a crazy good breakout year once again next season, then he can opt out and get a bigger paycheck. If not, he's locked in for at least $120 million. I mean, for Alex Bregman, a phenomenal deal. For the Red Sox, it does make sense. He's a righty. He gets to hit over the Green Monster. He gets to be, in Boston. And now they go directly competing with the Toronto Blue Jays, among other teams. Now, do I think this puts the Jays or the Red Sox over the top of many of the other teams? I don't think this is a needle-moving move. He would have fit perfectly with the Jays at third base, among other things. But man, oh man, is this an interesting trade or signing, to say the least. We see people now talking all over Twitter about how much he got overpaid. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like if the Jays did this deal, I'd be upset. I think it would have been a fine deal for the Jays to do. I mean, but again, $40 million for Alex Bregman in this economy is a little bit crazy, especially given the fact that Alex Bregman's going to be on the wrong side of 30. But again, it's a short-term deal, and we heard for a very long time that he wasn't looking for a short-term deal. Ultimately, he decided that is what's best for him, and it does make some sense. I mean, he now gets to continue to compete. And as for the Jays, they missed out on yet another free agent, right? And it started to be pretty clear towards the end that the Jays weren't going to be super competitive surrounding Alex Bregman over the past, 24 hours. There were reports from a bunch of different reporters. I mean, the Cubs were finalists there for a while. We had some, rumblings from Jeff Passan. The Jays were in it, but not really. All these different things. I mean, he's still an elite fielder, but the Jays missed out on him. And hopefully with Boston, he doesn't have a breakout year. Like, by breakout, of course, he's had MVP caliber seasons, but I'm talking about, getting back to that 900 OPS player, because he's one of the best defensive third basemen in the league. He's only 30 years old. But again, I mean, a 3-year deal is going to age a lot better than the 6-year deals we were hearing. And speaking of the 6-year deals, Jon Heyman just dropped this. Alex Bregman turned down a 6-year deal worth over $170 million to sign with the Red Sox. And people say it sounds like a Jays offer. I mean, this had to have been the Toronto Blue Jays offer. We knew the Cubs weren't going that far. We knew the Astros weren't going that far. It was the Jays offer in all likelihood. So the Jays once again miss out here on a free agent in which they technically had the highest bid. Now, at least in this case, we can, live with the fact that the Jays probably weren't, they weren't really finalists necessarily. But I mean, honestly, 3 years, 120 with opt-outs after each year is arguably better than the 170 million. Yes, 170 is more guaranteed money. But if you're Alex Bregman, you can bet on yourself whatsoever. I mean, it's a better deal with the Red Sox. And I'm sure the Jays offered that deal, but it didn't seem like he wanted to be with the Blue Jays. And Boston offers an interesting chance. And especially with that Green Monster over there, he can hit 30, maybe even touch, approaching 40 home runs. And I don't think 40 is going to happen, but you never know in the Green Monster. So, I mean, ultimately, Alex Bregman now is a Boston Red Sox. And it's unfortunate because if he would have went to the NL, would have went to the Cubs, anything like that, it would have been a lot better for the Boston Red Sox, for the Blue Jays, sorry, because then you wouldn't have to compete with the Red Sox. And now the AL East is getting a little bit stronger day by day. I still think it's wide open, but now the Jays are going to start pivoting. Now, you can see here, I didn't think Bregman would get a deal that solid at this stage of the offseason. I mean, late in the offseason to get a deal of that magnitude is not only surprising, but it's a little bit, blasphemous to a degree. I mean, it's a good deal for Alex Bregman. You have to give him credit. There's no doubt about it. But now that Alex Bregman has officially signed with, with the Red Sox, not the Blue Jays, the trade market will start to open up. And there's been a lot of rumblings. Now, let's think back to Atkins, press conference that he had last week. Atkins suggested, we'll focus on the bullpen first. The bullpen is one area where the Jays could potentially add players in terms of position players. If there's a way to increase our depth, we'll look at that. And this is, of course, about both bullpen and position players, but specifically now position players. Tellingly, he added that at this point, it would require a trade for us to add to the team. It doesn't have to, but most likely would be the case. Now, he said this last week, and I'm sure he had a feeling that the Jays weren't going to be getting Alex Bregman, because he basically said any of these additions would be depth, or any big moves would be via trade. And at this point, it seems like he knew that they weren't going to get Alex Bregman. There were some rumblings about how the Jays didn't want to be out leveraged, and he was just saying that because he feel like they had a very solid offer and they feel they had a very good offer for Bregman. I mean, clearly they did have a good offer. If that, whatever, from John Heyman, assuming that's the Jays offer, not the Astros offer. I mean, 6 years, 170. You have to assume if the Astros offered that, he probably would have took it. There were some rumblings about him holding out for a $200 million contract. It wasn't the case. Obviously, now with the Jays, he would have gotten around 170 million, but he's going to stick with the Boston Red Sox offer at $40 million AAV, which is good for him. Get his money. He's a great player. But now as you shift to the trade market, I mean, it's interesting. They're done with the starting pitchers. Maybe the bullpen can get some additions, but as it pertains now to specifically the trade market, the Jays have a few different opportunities. Now, again, they're looking to add depth to the bullpen, they're looking at depth everywhere, but as it comes to where they need to make additions, currently their starting third baseman is Ernie Clement. So Ernie Clement is the guy who's going to be manning third base come opening day, assuming they don't make any more moves. And opening day is about a month away now, a month and a bit. So we're talking about a third baseman in Ernie Clement. Is that good enough? Let me know down below if you think and you feel confident starting third base with, of course, Ernie Clement. I think at this point, Ernie Clement is an extremely, extremely good, utility player. But as a starting third baseman on a team that is as good as, not a team that's as good as the Jays. They're coming off a 74, win season, but a team that has aspirations to be as good as they are. Is that good enough? Is Ernie Clement good enough? That's the thing. If not, and if the front office doesn't feel so, you can now start to look at the third base market. Nolan Arenado, he's really starting to pick up. There's been rumblings of the Dodgers. There's been rumblings of the Red Sox. But now the Red Sox definitely aren't going to go for Nolan Arenado because they have the third baseman in Alex Bregman. So now as you start to think about where they can make moves and where all these different things can go, at this point, the Jays' outfield is probably set. Most of their infield is set. Third base is the glaring hole. If they are going to make a trade, it's probably going to be for third base unless they go for, a buy low guy. Yo Moncada, he signed with the Angels for 5 years. That's a buy low deal that I don't think Moncada is a difference maker, but it would have probably been, a higher ceiling than Ernie Clement. But if they feel confident with Ernie Clement, it's going to be interesting. Now, something else to keep in mind is, of course, Aurelvis Martinez. Do we see a world now where he gets a ton of run with the chance in spring training to break out and win that starting third baseman role come opening day? I would love to see that add some power in the lineup. Alan Roden again as well, an outfielder who can play, multiple different positions, can play everywhere. He, could also factor well into the Jays' plans going forward. So it's going to be interesting. I think a trade is on the horizon for the Jays, just like Ross Atkins said. But either way, we're going to keep you up to date with all the latest news. So make sure to hit the subscribe button. Let me know down below. Are you upset the Jays missed out on Bregman? And if so, who do you think is going to be the starting third baseman for the Jays coming opening night? Let me know down below. Thanks for picking up. Keep you guys up to date. Cheers.